Hi folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. So today I'm going to try to cover two subjects. I hadn't planned on that. I'd only planned on doing one, but there is something else that I don't know. I've got I guess a gut feeling that I probably should at least mention it. Um, and we'll get into it here in a little bit. Before I talk about it, I want to say that number one, this is a subject that we're not allowed to talk about here on YouTube. So I'm going to be tiptoeing around things, and I hope you can follow me because of that. And then the second thing is that I'm not saying that I completely believe this. This is one of these theories, these theories that's been floating around for 4 years that so much of it just, I think it's just psyop disinformation, but this is one of them that it's starting to look more and more like it's a possibility. And if it is, regardless of where you stand on it, regardless of the outcome, I think it's gonna create a lot of havoc for a lot of us. So it is something that in the back of our minds, if nothing else, we need to be thinking about and preparing for. Before we get started, I want to thank you for watching and ask that you go ahead and click that like button and subscribe to the channel and click the little bell icon. That way you can get notifications of when I post new videos, and maybe even share them around if you would, because that's really the only way that we can bring in new people to the fold and expose them to my crazy way of thinking. And I do appreciate it. The other thing that we're going to talk about, or at least I don't know, we'll see. Can socialism and freedom exist together? And where this country is headed when it comes to that. So this first one, and again, this is difficult. I've been thinking, man, my nose is itching, so I apologize. I don't really know how to talk about this without, saying the things that need to be said. So we're going to try to tiptoe around it. You're all aware of the whole thing that happened the first part of November and all the court proceedings and stuff that's happened since then. And it appeared for a while that the president had some kind of leg to stand on, but everything is being shut down and shut out, from the Supreme Court all the way down to local courts. Some of it seems to be legitimate, but some of these cases I've looked at, it seems to me pretty obvious that that there's some serious biasness going on by these judges. And people are still talking in his circles that they believe that come January, he will continue on. And people are wondering how that's going to happen. Now, I understand there's this electoral college process and confirmation in January. But even that, who knows, right? So there's been some things that's happened in the last few days. Not all of it, but a lot, it's more and more is happening. And I've kind of read some of it, and I just think that we should at least be aware of it. So don't think that I'm going off on some crazy conspiracy, because it's starting to kind of come together as more of just some crazy theory that it could happen. And if it does happen, we need to be prepared for it. So you're probably all aware of it. Back in 2018, he signed an executive order basically pertaining to the very thing that's happened this year, this November, back in November. The exact same thing that we are experiencing, that those of you are aware of, that's been in the news, that's been in the courts, in these states that it happened in. That very exact same thing, he wrote an executive order for back in 2018. And I find that very, very interesting. And of course, all along he has said that what has happened could very well happen, and that's probably why the executive order was signed. A lot of people are wondering, why isn't he enforcing this executive order? Why sign it knowing that this is going to happen and then do nothing about it? And there's been a lot of speculation back and forth. But let's look at some stuff that's happened recently. And I'm not saying that I believe this. I'm not saying what will or won't happen, because I can't on here. I'm just showing you some things and hopefully letting you kind of put it all together and see what you think. For starters, the press secretary and a few people around him, the press secretary, the vice president, they've been making a lot of statements over the past week indicating that they plan on being there come, let's say, the 1st of February, that they plan on staying, that they believe that that is what the outcome is going to be. At first, there was a week or two there that there were some things being said that kind of almost sounded like they were giving up. Kind of almost sounded like they were kind of, realizing what the outcome actually was. But then that's all kind of changed. And there's been a lot of talk by officials within his White House that sounds very much like that they know something and that they're going to be there and that, it's kind of a done deal. And then there's, I'm still thinking, bear with me, folks. This is difficult because I know that they're just itching to ban this video. There was an executive order signed just a few days ago, another executive order. Maybe nothing, right? A lot of times stuff is nothing. We read too much into it. But it's an executive order making Christmas Eve, December 24th, a federal holiday for executive departments, agencies of the federal government. And it's been said that the president is encouraging federal workers in Washington to go home for the holidays. You have an extra day off, officially an extra day off. So go home and spend it with your families. What's strange, and maybe it's just because it's a nice gesture, right? It's been a rough year. Take an extra, official day off and go home and be with your families. But what's strange is it's only for this year. He did not continue this at, making this a federal holiday from here on out. It's just for this year that he's doing this. So that's a little strange. And like I said, there's been a lot of talk. There's just been a lot of talk, right? And there was some rumors spreading around. I believe it was yesterday or the day before that he has spoken to people within his office saying that he plans on being there, that he's not leaving. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's at least what's being said. Then Peter Navarro, the head of the Commerce Department. Sorry. A department that you wouldn't think has anything to do with an election. And he released a 36-page report alleging, and I'll let you read it because I'm not going to say. And I read through most of it, and it's very compelling, and comes across very definitive. Almost like it's one more person in his office, in his White House, that is trying to set the stage for the American people that this is, in fact, the true account. Then there's this, and this isn't the first time, but it does sound a little bit more and more. Michael Flynn talked about military being deployed. Obviously, he's been bringing troops home. There has been a lot of shakeup within the Department of Defense since the 1st of November, a lot of restructuring, reorganizing. There was actually another executive order. I forgot to get a screenshot of it, but there was an executive order he issued for the DOD for a chain of command contingency if there was ever the head of the DOD or any officers, the heads of the DOD, if there was deaths within that chain of command, how the chain of command would be restructured. Strange, I find that. And then this happened today. And I'm going to put the screenshot up here. The acting defense secretary halts the transition briefings. What's interesting is he halted them till after the holiday break. Again, is he just being nice? I mean, there's several days. There's no reason why, if their plan is to continue the transition briefings and workings, that they couldn't get some more stuff done before December 24th. That's a week away. So why all of a sudden halt it? Is there something happening? There's a lot of rumors out there. And again, it's just rumors, but there's a lot of rumors that there could be some major announcements and major movements on the chessboard in the coming week. It may be nothing, folks. I don't want to hype it up. I don't want everyone to get terrified. I don't want everyone to go into this panic mode. But regardless of how you feel about him, regardless of whether you want this to happen or not, the truth is, the fact is, that if the things that we're alluding to take place, it's going to cause a lot of chaos. It's going to be pretty epic. It's never really been done before in this country, and it has happened in other countries, and many times when this sort of thing happens, it causes civil wars. And there's already states that are proposing, secession papers, and there's a lot of very bold and mainstream talk about secession, civil war, and things like that. Is it just because everyone is so frustrated and distraught because of the outcome, and that nothing seems to be done about it, that the FBI, the DOJ, none of them have done their job, and that it looks like this thing that's happened is just going to get away with it? I don't know. All I'm doing is I saw all these things and was kind of connecting the dots and thought, it's starting to look like that there's a strong possibility that there could be some major plays happening over the next week or so. So all I'm doing is just bringing it to you. You can take it for what it's worth, toss it in the trash, or, start preparing as much as you possibly can, mentally, physically, every way, spiritually, because if this in fact does happen, it's going to really upset a lot of things, and we're going to see some stuff happen in this country that we probably thought we'd never ever see. All right, that's about all I'm going to say about that. The second thing, I hid it in my coat here. Rasmussen, and we're going to shift gears here. We're going to talk about socialism. Rasmussen did a poll the first of this month, and they were asking questions to these people that they were polling about socialism, and asking some questions. And I was, there's always been this kind of left-right paradigm in this country, and even though I don't, I think that that's part of the distraction, is this left-right paradigm. The fact is that there is certainly a segment of population in this country, more so now than ever, that is embracing this idea of socialism and Marxism and one world government and more control and this forced equality and these forced social ideas upon people. And I believe that's become a problem. And from what I'm seeing in this poll is the divide may be deeper and bigger than we thought. And so that's why I want to mention it. I want to talk about this. One of the questions was, which is better, a free market economy or socialism? And surprisingly, 75% of the people polled said that a free market economy system was better. 11% said socialism, 14% said they didn't know, and that's probably the 14% of the people that have no clue what socialism or free market economy is, or they just don't care. These are the mindless drones, okay? That's the ones that say not sure. It's a mindless drone. How can you be not sure? I mean, come on. Is socialism or free market? I don't know. Whatever. Come on now. Here's something. This one, I don't know if this is too, unusual. Do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, or very unfavorable impression of Joe Biden? 32% very favorable, 19% somewhat unfavorable, 11% somewhat unfavorable, and 36% very unfavorable. Pretty even divide there. So that's not too terribly unusual. This one they threw in there, and I thought that this is getting a little bit more to my point. Do you have a very favorable, somewhat unfavorable, those questions? Impression of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, she's the only other one that they listed in here other than Joe Biden. And the reason why that's significant is I think she's kind of become the poster person to use a politically correct term, here in the United States, of the far, hard, socialist, Marxist, communist left, right? I mean, she's open about it. She doesn't deny it. And so, as much as we want to say Joe Biden is a big socialist, and he definitely, some of his policies are certainly socialistic. The truth is he's kind of sort of moderate, especially when you compare him to many on the hard left. And so this one showed 18% were very favorable to her, 19% were somewhat favorable, 20% were somewhat unfavorable, and 38% were very unfavorable. So here we have a little less than 40% of the American population seem to pretty much like her. They like her ideas. They like her. Now, is it because they like her because she's young and she's cool and she does all these cool live streams in her kitchen, drinking wine and just chitty-chat, like all the other millennials? Or do they like her because of her policies? Don't really know. But now we're going to get into some of the meat and taters. All right. They asked a lot of questions about the Great Reset, United Nations, one world government type stuff. And this is the stuff that I'm really wanting to get into. Are you familiar with the Great Reset movement, a global economic strategy in response to the pandemic that seeks to change the priorities of capitalism? 35% said yes, and 41% said no. 52% of government workers said they are familiar with the reset. And 70% of those that said they were familiar said that they support it. Okay, moving on. Do you strongly favor, somewhat oppose, or strongly oppose the Great Reset? 22% strongly favor, 20% somewhat favor, 10% somewhat oppose, 43% strongly oppose. So about a 60-40 split there, approximately. But here's where this is what stood out. Although this isn't that unusual, I think what it's doing is it's showing how the divide works. 76% of Republicans said that they do not favor the Great Reset. Who in the world are those 24%? Must be some of the staunch rhinos. And even them, I'm really surprised. Yeah, we're not talking about the people in office. We're talking about people on the streets that's voting Republican. 24% of Republicans support that? Man. 72% of Democrats said they favor it. And 67% of other party affiliations said they do not favor the Great Reset. So 72% of Democrats said that they like it. And this poll goes on, and we're seeing very similar numbers. They ask questions about the United Nations. 66% of government workers are very favorable to the United Nations. It goes on and on. 65% of government workers think that the United Nations, the Economic Forum, International Monetary Fund should be very influential in U.S. government. Same way with Democrats. It goes on and on. So the point that I'm making here is, I'm going to try to wrap it up because this video is going way longer than I wanted it to, is we're not just seeing Democrats and Republicans. In the past, Democrats and Republicans and the left and the right, they really agreed with a lot of things, and it was usually only more of their extreme left and extreme right positions that they disagreed on. But what we're seeing is a greater divide of Americans that support this country being its own sovereign nation and freedom and liberty and in the within the constitutional bounds of government. And then we see getting close to a pretty even split of people in this country that are pushing for one world government, new world order, Great Reset, United Nations, International Monetary Fund, and so forth. This is not something we can continue to ignore. Just like we've seen with this election, there is a serious divide in this nation. And at some point, every nation that continually deepens and develops this level of divide it ends in some type of either collapse, civil war, something. And I think it's all starting to come to a head. It may pass, and we may not see this kind of, you know, problem for many years, but I tend to think that that's not the case. So, looking at everything that's going on, folks, um, I think we need to be serious about not just our physical preparations, but getting ourselves mentally prepared for very possibly what's upon us. And then when you add in, you know, the shot in the arm and the economy collapsing, it seems, uh, again, things are looking pretty crazy. So, all right, folks, let me know what you think. Um, I'll see if I can talk on this maybe some more, but we'll see how YouTube likes or dislikes this video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.